Hello and welcome to Sports Talk right here on Love 101. It is Saturday, January 14, 2023. I'm Daniel Blake. Thank you so much for joining me. We should have a great show today, as usual. We ever have bad shows? No, I wouldn't say that. Hopefully, none of you say that either. But today, our focus is going to be on the English Premier League. Almost, well, call it there at the halfway stage. So, all the big teams are where they should be or should not be. So we're at that point where the title race is getting really hot. The European places and the relegation battle is going on very well. So we're going to have two great analysts, Damian Gordon and Brian Pitter, who will be joining me after the 1:15 break to discuss every single thing on the English Premier League. Well, the major talking points, because if we talk about every single thing, then we'd be here all day. But we'll be talking about that, including the Manchester derby from this morning. Manchester City thought they had it, but some controversial call. And then Marcus Rashford leading Manchester United to a 2-1 win. Usually, I'm not that happy that Manchester United wins a game, but being an Arsenal fan and being top of the table, slowing City down, go Manchester United. So after the 1:15 break, we'll talk about all of that. Remember that you can stay connected with me here on Sports Talk. So if you have views on the English Premier League or anything sports related that you may hear during the show, you can WhatsApp me 876-997-3125. That's 876-997-3125. Leave all your comments there. You can just type it out. I know someone who wants a voice on air. Unfortunately, I can't do so much things at once. So just type it out and I'll read it to you, I promise. And remember, we are live on YouTube and Facebook. So if you have comments, you can leave it in the comment section there as well. So Love 101 FM on Facebook and YouTube, we are live. So if you want to participate in the show with your comments, please feel free to leave there. Remember, you can listen on the Love 101 FM app in the Google Play or Apple Store. You can go on your internet browser, love101.org, or you can listen the old-fashioned way on the radio from 101.1 all the way to 101.9 on your FM band. So it's going to be, as I mentioned, a great show. We're going to hear my monologue very shortly, as well as the sports bit, which is the mini sports report. Suzette already saying, hey, Mr. Big Shot Daniel, don't recall being a big shot, but go Man U. Same here, just for today though, just for today. And Nicole already sending greetings. Speaking of greetings, happy birthday to one of my very good friends, Deandra. She tuning in just to hear that greeting. So as she hear it, she probably just going to turn it off. But Deandra, have a happy birthday wherever you are. And yeah, no, just listen to the entire show. Don't bother change it. And everybody who has celebrated a birthday so far in January and to come, happy birthday. All right, so let's go into the mini sports report for today, the sports bits, before we get into the monologue. So let's start with netball. The Sunshine Girls have the chance to win their 3-match Vitality Series on Sunday after beating hosts England 61-58 earlier today to level the series at 1-1. The Jamaicans, who lost the first match 73-52, found themselves down 18-12 at the end of the first quarter. However, they rallied to go into the half, leading 31-27. They led from then on as they closed the third quarter 48-41, before adding 13 more goals in the fourth quarter to seal the win. Captain Janelle Fowler was faultless as she scored 56 goals from her 56 attempts, and wing attack Khadija Williams was named MVP. The series will be decided tomorrow at 9 a.m. Now, the schoolboy football season officially ends today. I know that all the major competitions ended in December, but it officially ends today at the National Stadium with the All Manning versus Alder Costa All-Star game at 6 p.m. Both teams will feature players from the top schools from the urban and rural area from the various competitions. The All Manning Cup team will be led by Jamaica College head coach Davion Ferguson, who won the Manning and Champions Cup this season, while the All Da Costa team will be led by Lenworth Hyde, head coach of the Da Costa Cup and Olivia Shield champions Clarendon College. Now, some big news because the Reggae Girls defender Alison Swaby is on the verge of securing a major transfer to Paris Saint-Germain in the French women's first division. She is expected to leave Angel City FC in Los Angeles. The 26-year-old has been a key member of Jamaica's World Cup qualifying team in 2018 and 2022. Swaby does have European experience after spending 4 years with Italy's AS Roma. PSG currently lead the French division and are looking to win just their second ever Division 1 title. And as we mentioned, the English Premier League is the focus as Manchester United produced a late comeback to beat rivals Manchester City 2-1 earlier today. Jack Grealish gave City the lead on the hour mark, but a controversial Bruno Fernandes goal in the 78th and Marcus Rashford in the 82nd gave United the win, which sees them move to 38 points. 1 point behind second place City, who could fall 8 points behind leaders Arsenal, who played Tottenham in the North London derby on Sunday. Liverpool's struggles continued after their 3-0 defeat to Brighton, and Reggae Boy Leon Bailey was on the score sheet as Aston Villa beat Leeds 2-1 on Friday. Other games saw Wolves beating West Ham 1-0, Leicester going down 2-0 to Nottingham Forest, and Southampton coming from behind to beat Everton 2-1. And finally, Jamaicans will get a chance to see cricket legend Brian Lara in action when he participates in Sunday's staging of the T20 Festival at Treasure Beach Sports Park in St. Elizabeth. At 1 p.m., the 53-year-old Lara and fellow West Indian great Chris Gayle are set to captain opposing teams comprising leading former West Indies and Jamaican cricketers in the feature game of the festival organized by former West Indies and Jamaican fast bowler Darren Powell. Lara retired in 2007 as one of the greats of the game with nearly 12,000 runs in Test cricket, including his world record 400 not out. I know that he's 53, but I mean, any chance to see Brian Lara bat is a good day. So if you're in St. Elizabeth, go on down. Why not? It should be good. All right. So you know what time of the day it is.
Connection established. It's time for Daniel's weekly monologue.
I'm Ariel Brown Blake.
I'm Dave Blake.
I'm Hope Blake.
I'm David Blake.
And it's time for the Danielog.
The Danielog.
The Danielog.
The Danielog.
I will love it. And I think I deserve it.
All right. So one of the major stories to come out of Jamaica this week isn't really sports related, but it involves one of our great sportsmen. Arguably, not even arguably, our greatest sportsman ever. So, Usain Bolt had, I believe, some investment accounts in a certain institution, Stocks and Securities Limited, and an investigation was done earlier this week because it was found that millions was missing from his account. According to the Gleaner, Bolt's manager said that even though they won't disclose the number, they have called the police, and that he's been with the entity for 10 years. His entire portfolio is being reviewed, and apparently an employee has been implicated in the widespread fraud at the company and may have been involved in the developments surrounding Bolt. So why am I talking about this, even though it isn't necessarily a sporting issue? So fraud, scamming, all of those things are extremely wrong because I believe people work hard to get what they work for. So for you as an individual or individuals to go out and take that away through illegal means is extremely wrong, and you deserve to face every action the law can hand down on you, right? But the reason why it sort of hurts me is because the individual or individuals involved in this fraud did it to Usain Bolt. No, I'm not saying that, it should have happened to somebody else. It shouldn't happen to anybody at all. But can you imagine Usain Bolt coming from his very small community in Trelawney, going to William Knibb High School with little to no resources, going through all the struggles with injury and everything, to become an 8-time Olympic champion, winning a whole bunch of medals in the World Championships. He's still the world record holder in the 100, 200, and 4x1. And it seems like those records may stand for a few more years. The man is probably the first Jamaican to show us that international deals are not impossible, signing multi-million-dollar deals with Puma, with Gatorade, with Hoblo, the watch people, starting his own set of businesses, investments, all those things. His last net worth was US $90 million. That's right, that's US. According to those financial people, he's worth US $90 million. And you, as some set of individuals, thought, let's take his money. One of our greatest citizens ever, a national hero, in my opinion, should have been done a long time ago. And you were so brazen to move the man money. No, if it was up to me, these individuals should get life in prison. No, I don't know the law like that, so I don't know if this offense would be worth life in prison. But if I was a judge, I'd give you. And even if you don't get life in prison, even if you get a few years or whatever like that, after that, I'd revoke your Jamaican citizenship. Every business you go, I'd make sure that your face plastered on every single wall so that nobody serve you, whether private or public sector. Out of all of the people, you decide to do it to Bolt. Oh my gosh. Anyways, I hope that this is sorted out and that Bolt is able to, get back every single cent, because that man definitely worked for it. As Gene Watson said, them two teeth. Thank you, Gene. Out of all of the people, them. Fix it, Lord. All right, that is my monologue for this week. And as I mentioned at the start of the show, the English Premier League is our focus on the show today. So we'll soon be joined by Brian and Damien. So stay with us right here on Love 101.
Hey everybody, I'm Ashley.
I'm Jakal.
I'm Victor.
I'm Chantel.
And we are
The Pulse Podcast.
You can find us every Saturday at 7 p.m. on Love 101 FM JA's YouTube channel.
Yes, 7 to 8 p.m. And ensure you follow us on social media, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. At The Pulse Podcast JA.
the Pulse Podcast, your weekly source of authentic, Jamaican, faith-based, creative content and edutainment.
About culture, creative expressions and games. This is the Pulse Podcast.
There is power. Come on. In the name of Jesus. Women's Oasis Ministries presents Women's Conference 2023. It's a clarion call. Women arise, repositioned and ignited for God's glory. Saturday, January 14, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Church of the Open Bible, Twickenham Park. The conference is free. Lunch is only $1,000. Come hear the word from Reverend Melody Palmer, Minister Angela Slack, Dr. Sidian Brady Brown, and Apostle Wayne Palmer. The Women's Oasis Ministries Conference, Saturday, January 14 at the Open Bible Church, Twickenham Park. Restoring, refreshing, renewing, an oasis of wholesomeness. Call 876-522-4030 or email womensoasisministries@gmail.com. The Women's Oasis Ministries Conference, Saturday, January 14 at the Open Bible Church, Twickenham Park, with the highlights at 3:30 p.m. on the family station, Love 101.
Break every chain, to break every chain, break every chain.
This is Amazing Grace. Kingston Keswick Convention 2023 is on. Be transformed to transform with the lunch hour meetings at 12:15 p.m. to 1 p.m. Monday, January 23 to Friday, January 27 with speakers Reverend Dr. Dallin Toussaint at the Webster Memorial Church, Reverend Carl B. Johnson at Jamaica Theological Seminary, and Reverend Stephen Luke Simpson at the Waltham Park New Testament Church. The main nightly meetings at the Boulevard Baptist Church at 7 p.m. with speakers Reverend Dr. Rowan Ambersley, Sunday, January 22 and 29, and Monday through to Wednesday, January 23 to 25. Then on Thursday, January 26, the Healing Ministry with Dr. Wayne Henry, and the Youth Ministry on Friday, January 27 with Reverend Clayton Roberts. On Saturday, January 28, the Kingston Keswick Men's Meeting is at 8 a.m. at the Grace Missionary Church with Bishop Rowan Edwards and Dr. Michael Coombs. The Keswick Women's Gathering is at the Boulevard Baptist Church at 10:30 a.m. with Reverend Kareen Wilson Bailey. And the Keswick Children's Meeting at 3 p.m. at the Bethel Baptist Church with Miss Blossom Tucker. Kingston Keswick will be live on Love 101 FM, Love TV, and MTM TV. Call 876-922-7140. Kingston Keswick 2023. Be transformed to transform.
Welcome back to Sports Talk here on Love 101. It is 20 minutes past 1 p.m. If you were up this morning, you'd have watched the Manchester Derby, Manchester United taking it over Manchester City 2-1. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not usually a fan of Manchester United winning games, but if it's against Manchester City, I'm all here for it as an Arsenal fan. But the Premier League is at the halfway stage. We know the contenders from the pretenders, and all those positions are sorting out themselves right now. So we're going to be joined by two very good analysts. First, if one of the things that I was on TV enough during during a certain month, this man was leading the charge, sports presenter, and my very good friend, Damian Gordon. Damian, good afternoon, my brother.
Hi, good afternoon, Daniel. Good afternoon to the listeners. You mentioned pretenders, and that's where I'm in. That's a category I'm in right now.
Far from it. And also joining is sports producer and reporter Brian Pitter. Brian, good afternoon to you. All right, Brian, I think your mic is muted. So if you can fix that real quick.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, man, can hear you now. All
Yeah,
right.
man. Good afternoon, guys.
Hi, good afternoon.
All right. So because both of you are Chelsea fans, I'll spare you for now. But let's start with that Manchester derby this morning. Manchester City looking like a shadow of themselves. Quite frankly, most of the season they've had to grind through games. Damian, what went wrong, not just in this game, but in previous games? City usually very dominant, but what are they not doing this time around?
You mentioned that they're far off from their silky smooth self. In terms of points accumulation, that they're not very far off from where they were last season. I think Arsenal, they're just setting a frightening pace that the rest of the league is finding difficult to cope with. And once Manchester City finds themselves trailing in terms of points, this is what it's going to do to them. I mean, they're having to play catch up, and they're not used to that. And so it is somewhat, discombobulated the chemistry and the mindset of the players in a sense. But in terms of players coming in, you see that Pep Guardiola sometimes he's trying new things, and of course with the acquisition of Aaron Haaland, the team has found different ways to play, and they're trying to play for him instead of a total football. And that to me has taken away a little bit of Manchester City's movement and passing of the football, because they tend to transition from back to front a little bit quicker than we've seen them in recent decades. And so I think this is something that a lot of opponents have managed to work out against Manchester City. And that is why they allow them to have possession, but they're not as dominant as they were and dangerous on the break, because they tend to take 1, 2, 3 many passes a little bit more. And so now you see we're in a case of the Manchester derby this morning. Manchester United were willing to allow them to have the possession in areas that it didn't hurt them. And when they did lose possession, Manchester United tried to get in behind them very quickly, and they did so quite frequently, and really could have put away more than 2 goals in this game today.
Yeah, and Brian, Damon makes a very good point, because I think last season we thought that Manchester City didn't win the Champions League and over the last 2 seasons because they didn't have a number 9. Know that they have a number 9 who almost scores for fun. They tend to struggle in some of those games. Do you think that Pep hasn't quite adjusted to Haaland's game, even though has Haaland adjusted to Pep's system, even though Haaland has had those goals this season so far?
Yeah, I think Damien was spot on, actually. But in terms of what Pep has been trying to do with Haaland this season, it's really down to the actual greatness and talent of Erling Haaland himself. I think we've seen Pep Guardiola kind of refraining away from going with that main striker. I think the only one where it really worked out was with Lewandowski, who was an out-and-out striker, but then he kind of changed his game a bit to kind of suit his style of play. So we know that Pep is not really used to these kinds of formations, but I think we should not take away Manchester United's brilliant performance. I think it was just a brilliant game by Manchester United. The momentum was with them. The tenacity within the squad seems to have changed, and that's mostly down to their new manager Ten Hag. So I think it was mostly down to Manchester United being the better team today.
Yeah, Damien, as a coach yourself, you know that the type of impact that, having discipline tactically and even off the field. We know that Ronaldo left in December, and a lot of people felt that he was holding the team back. Now, knowing that United are essentially in the title race after this win today, what has impressed you the most about Ten Hag and how he's gone about his on-field tactics, but also the things that he's done off the field?
There's something about Manchester United under Ten Hag which I admire. They haven't really been flashy and brilliant, but they have been very difficult in terms of breaking them down. They're not seemingly so vulnerable as they were once under Ole and previous coaches. You see Manchester United play, and you're going to have to work to break them down now. And if and when they win possession, they're also good in transition. So I think that's something that Ten Hag must be given credit for, the way he has organized the team in such a way. And a big call to drop the captain as well, Maguire, to make sure that Manchester United is a little bit more defensively solid, because with Maguire in there, they're always easy for the taking. And Varane has come in and once he's going to be able to stay fit, I think that Manchester United definitely, they're not going to be pretenders this season. They're going to be in it. And it's a long, long time that they haven't found themselves breathing down the necks of Manchester City, in the Premier League. And I think that Ten Hag, the way he has come in and set the team up to play in transition, but also be very aware when they lose the ball and where they need to be to stop their opponent from hurting them so quickly as they did in previous season, is something that Manchester United can be given credit for. And this is why I think you're seeing them where they are in the table, because you can't really say that Manchester United has been a beautiful watch. They've been very effective, though.
Yeah. Brian, they're still in all their major competitions, the Premier League, the Europa League, FA Cup, Carabao Cup. Knowing that at the start of the season, we felt that this squad was not up to par in terms of challenging City and Liverpool, but now knowing where they are and still being in the prime of every single competition, do you think that they can end their trophy-less drought this season?
I think it's very possible, especially with the fact that they're in the semi-finals of the League Cup. They seem to have, with all due respect to Forest, a solid run into the final, and if they go to the final, there's always a chance of winning. But in terms of the Europa League, I think that's going to be a bit more challenging. But it all boils down to momentum. We've seen what momentum can do to teams that have started the season negatively. As a Chelsea fan, we know this. Chelsea usually starts the season, badly with Saka manager, and then all of a sudden we win the Champions League at the end of the season. So things can change in the middle of the season like that. And I think with Manchester United now, they've developed this run inspired by Marcus Rashford. If he stays in that form for Manchester United, then I think it'd be very vital. But the team overall seems to be playing better. They know what they're about. They go onto that field, and there's an identity now in that club. So I think going towards the end of the season, we can see Manchester United perhaps lifting a trophy. Yeah.
All right. Before we go to the break, Damien, even though not Premier League related, Ronaldo signing that mega deal in Saudi Arabia after his disappointments with United and Portugal. We had some conversations off air during the World Cup in December. But now seeing everything that unfolded, what do you think his legacy now is? We often called him the GOAT in previous years, but with all that has transpired over the last 18 months, do you think that this has affected his legacy?
I think it has left a bitter taste, more so in the mouths of Manchester United fans. But I think in terms of his legacy, there's no undoing of what he has done so far. He's been a great goal scorer. He's been a great winner. He's been serial about keeping himself in shape. And so I don't think that it takes away from his legacy. I do believe, though, it rubs Manchester United fans the wrong way. And the fact is that Ronaldo was not able to get out of the way of his ego, and that is what tripped him up in the end, because he thought that he was 27 instead of understanding that he's near 40 and he needed to be a facilitator. But he has not been that player. And so it was always difficult for him to take a step back and give somebody else a stage or the microphone, because they say sometimes a good dancer understands when to leave the stage. And he seemingly didn't understand that his time was coming to an end, and that is something that he needed to embrace. But I think that moving to the Middle East now has given him a chance to fatten his bank book a little bit more. And I don't think it will hurt as he walks off into the sunset. So I'm happy for him. I don't think that it's fair for people to be bashing him for making that move to head over to Qatar. And I think that I wish him to Saudi Arabia. In fact, I wish him all the best there. There is, some news that certainly Lionel Messi could end up there as well. That would be very, very fascinating as they launch a bid for the 2030 World Cup. But for Ronaldo, you can't take away from what he has given to the game.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to step away from the stage very shortly as we have to take a break. Damien and Brian will be with me throughout the rest of the show. So stay with us right here on Sports Talk here on Love 101.
NIS pensioners, have you changed your address? The Ministry of Labor and Social Security needs to know. Complete the change of address form attached to your life certificate and return it immediately to the NIS office nearest you. For further information, call 876-922-8014 or visit the ministry's website. The National Insurance Scheme, always working for you. A message from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security.
It's time, folks, for Love 101 FM's listeners' picks for the 2022 hits. Send us your 3 songs by Jamaican artists and 2 songs from international artists that you believe should be on the list. Simply send your picks by standard text or WhatsApp to 876-997-3125. That's 876-997-3125. Send just one list with no more than 3 songs by Jamaican artists and 2 songs from international artists. Be sure to state the correct title of each song and the name of the corresponding artist. The songs you wish to nominate must have been played regularly on Love 101 in 2022, whether previously released or a new song in 2022, no matter what month it was released. Voting begins 12 p.m. Friday, January 13 through to 12 p.m. Tuesday, January 17. Nominations sent outside of this period will not be recognized. The nominations will be tallied and the top songs placed in the public space for Phase 2, which we will announce after Phase 1 has been completed. Share your 3 songs by Jamaican artists and 2 songs from international artists. Text or WhatsApp 876-997-3125, 12 p.m. Friday, January 13 through to 12 p.m. Tuesday, January 17. Nominations sent outside this period will not be recognized. It's the Love 101 listeners' picks for 2022 hits. Ready, set, text.
Hey everybody, I'm Ashley.
I'm Jakal.
I'm Victor.
I'm Chantel.
And we are
The Pulse Podcast.
You can find us every Saturday at 7 p.m. on Love 101 FMJA's YouTube channel.
Yes, 7 to 8 p.m. And ensure you follow us on social media, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram.
At The Pulse Podcast JA.
The Pulse Podcast, your weekly source of authentic, Jamaican, faith-based, creative content and edutainment.
About culture, creative expressions, and games. This is the Pulse
Hey, get ready for an inspiring time inside Love in the Morning with me, your host, Jakal Dyer. This Monday, January 16, 5:30 a.m. is Becoming You, a feature that shares tips on how to become the best version of who you are. Then, grab a cup of coffee and start the day right with Morning Coffee Pick Me Up Devotional at 6 a.m. 7:30 a.m. is Becoming Jamaican. We chat about all the unique things that make us who we are. 8:30 a.m. inside Healthy Way, we discuss pneumonia. 9:30 a.m. is Something More, brought to you by the Faith Cathedral Deliverance Center. Stick and stay with us. This Pick Me Up Monday inside Love in the Morning, 5 to 10 a.m. on the family station, Love 101.
All the world starts changing when the church starts praying.
The National Leadership Her Breakfast is scheduled for Thursday, January 19, 2023 at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel. Leading up to the Her Breakfast will be a special divine service on Sunday, January 15 at 10:15 a.m. at the Church of the Open Bible, 12 Washington Boulevard. Love 101 FM will be sharing highlights at 11 a.m. That's the per service for the National Leadership Her Breakfast Sunday, January 15 at 10:15 a.m. You can listen to the broadcast at 11 a.m. right here on the family station, Love 101.
101.1, 101.3, 101.5, 101.7, 101.9. Love is all you need.
Welcome back to Sports Talk here on Love 101. We have about 25 minutes ago. We have been talking about the English Premier League. Earlier, we spoke about Manchester United and Manchester City. We still have Damian and Brian with us. I was going to go into Arsenal's title challenge, but I want to give you guys a little time to rant because your Chelsea team currently 10th. Things haven't been going well since Graham Potter has joined, and even though you continuously spend dollar after dollar, pound after pound, things aren't happening on the field. Damian, if you can pinpoint to something that Potter is or isn't doing, what is it? Because it's not like these players aren't talented. So what's going on with your club?
I don't think anything is going wrong because here's a fact. If it is that Graham Potter was at Brighton and had them languishing in 10th position, all of a sudden it would be seeming as if he's winning the Premier League. You come to a club at Chelsea where you're expected to be challenging at the very top every season, and he just can't keep up. I think he's in a position where his technical qualities can't really sustain him. You know, you go to Brighton, and of course you're not burdened by the weight of expectation. At Chelsea, it's a completely different scenario, and we would have seen that as well at different clubs. Where Manchester United, following the ending of Sir Alex Ferguson's era, there are many who came after him, with the exception of Jose Mourinho and probably to a lesser extent Louis van Gaal. Everybody else that you put in that shoe was unable to fill it because there's a big expectation at Manchester United, Manchester City, and of course at Liverpool now. They're also struggling, but for different reasons. But the fact is that I think that Graham Potter is way in over his head, and I think the club made a big mistake when they sacked Tuchel and brought him in. Yes, you could have gotten rid of Tuchel, but you had to go for somebody else of the same ilk, somebody who is able to come in and manage the egos and, of course, get Chelsea to always be in title contention. And I don't think that Graham Potter, people talk about the fact that he doesn't have time. I don't think that he has the technical qualities to really cut it at this level.
Brian, do you share similar views in terms of Potter not being the man to take the team forward?
Yes and no. I agree with Damon where it really is the club's fault for hiring him in the first place. But at the same time, we have to also take into consideration that Potter was brought into a team that was bought for someone else, and perhaps doesn't possess the type of personnel that he would take to execute his playing style as adeptly as he would want. So I think there's a lot of factors that where that is concerned that is contributing to Potter's inability to kind of get the team going in a positive direction. But you know, we've seen this pattern over the years as Chelsea fans. We're not new to this type of atmosphere. It happened under Jose Mourinho. It happened under Lampard. It happened under Tuchel. It happened under previous managers before then, where players that previously won us titles all of a sudden seem as if they cannot perform or kick a ball. And it really boils down to the culture within the club, a culture that was kind of perpetuated by Roman Abramovich with the constant change and the constant cycle of managers going in and out the door. And ultimately that is going to catch up on any team. There needs to be a sense of stability.
Just to chime in there again, and if you look at Graham Potter's CV during his time at Brighton, it's the same thing that's affecting Chelsea now, the inability to be effective around the penalty area or inside the box. There's nothing going forward for the team. And again,
right.
I can't understand why he can't fix it. Yes, you touched on something very important there, Brian, that the team was not bought. It's a team that is functioning that wasn't really constructed by him. But the fact is that if you were to talk about it, he was thinking of bringing in Trossard as his big signing because he left Brighton to try and drag him over to Chelsea. And if that is your marquee target as a Chelsea manager, then your ambition is pretty much not in line with where the club wants to go. And so I don't think that he has the nous to really guide us to where we want to go. I think he could, at best, get Chelsea to finish 7th. Not when you have Manchester United on this renaissance, not when you have City always pouring. And despite Liverpool's troubles, Chelsea still can't get anywhere near them. So it tells you that this guy is completely out of his depth.
Yeah.
News that broke earlier this afternoon that Chelsea have agreed a 100 million euro deal with Shakhtar for Mudryk, who's been chased by Arsenal since 1991. Signed João Felix on loan. I know Nkunku is coming in the summer. Do you think that maybe Chelsea's transfer strategy is wrong. I know that Todd Bowley wants to bring in high profile players, and once they're good in their own leagues, they should be good in Chelsea. But do you think that he's actually putting Potter at a disadvantage by just buying players for the sake of it, essentially?
It's crazy. The guy is scouring the atmosphere trying to find every single player. It makes no sense. And the fact that they allowed Peter Crouch, or rather Petr Cech, to leave, and Gavaska, these were great people behind the scenes, and the invisible hand at work and make sure that the club was able to sign players that come in and fit the system. And now we're just going everywhere and buying players, and we've spent almost 400 million pounds already, and you can't see it manifesting itself out on the pitch. And the way they've gone about business, this American guy, Todd Bowley, has no idea what he's doing. It's almost like an NBA format that he's trying to take to really manage a Premier League team. And at the end of the day, if it is that they don't bring back in a football mind to put behind the scene to help the coach go out and scout talent, then it's just not going to work. Graham Potter had all the say at Brighton, where he was able to identify the players he wanted, and he would go for them, and the club would acquiesce to whatever request that he wanted. But that's not the case at Chelsea. He doesn't have the final say. But I hope that if they're going to keep him, as it appears that they've given him the vote of confidence even after that recent defeat, that they're going to keep him. I don't know what happens after Crystal Palace tomorrow, because we've always seen where, they say, the board says, oh yeah, you have a vote of confidence, another defeat and he's out the door. If they give him time and they allow him to bring the players in that he wants, I don't know if that fixes the problem for Chelsea, but I just don't think that the guy is at the level that we need.
Yeah, Brian. No, go ahead.
No, I was just in response to the transfers that Chelsea has been making. I think it's ridiculous to go for Murray, by the way, but it's not far-fetched from what we've seen Chelsea do in recent times. But this is something that has been kind of happening not just under the current regime, but previous regime as well. And it was sort of camouflaged by the Champions League win in 2021. But Marina, who was responsible for our transfers before she got let go around Abramovich last year, she brought in players like Havertz and Timo Werner and Lukaku, Kepa, for example, who we have come to the realization that they haven't perhaps lived up to their billing. And Timo, as much as he tried, he didn't live up to the quality that he possessed in the Bundesliga. Kai still hasn't lived up to that expectation that we wanted from him. So it's not a case where we can blame this on Todd. What I think Chelsea needs is that person like Emenalo, who we had in the early 2010s, who worked in tandem with the coaches that were there at the time to say, okay, what is your playing style? What are the type of players that you need? And these are the type of players that we're going to get. There's been a disassociation between the board and the manager in recent years, where the board deals with transfers and the manager just coaches the team, which I don't agree with. I think the manager needs to have some say in who comes into the club so that they can bring them in for their system.
Yeah, so while one London club has been going through a nightmare, another has been living the dream. Arsenal currently top of the table, 44 points, can extend their lead over City to 8 if they beat Tottenham on Sunday in the North London derby. Damian, what has impressed you the most about Arteta and Arsenal this season, especially coming off previous years where people felt that Arsenal had to invest heavily and get world-class players in?
Well, just to pick up on Brian's point, if it is that you're going to have a successful manager, then he has to have some amount of say in what players come into the club. And I think that Arsenal have given Arteta that kind of leverage, which allows him to move players on. We saw him coming in and moving on the biggest earner, the biggest name in the club in Aubameyang. And he was not afraid to make big decisions. And Willian was there. He moved on a couple of players that, he never thought was working well in his system. And now they've bought into the idea that Mikel Arteta is the man and the one that they're going to stick with. And I think that he has formed an alliance with the Arsenal fans and the players also that is going to make them almost, unbreakable at home in particular. They're creating, making Arsenal at home again a fortress. It's going to be difficult to play against them there. And they travel pretty well as the points table will tell you. As it relates to what happens at the end of the season, I still believe that, if Arsenal, with 10 games to go, they have to have a sizable lead on Manchester City, because I think that this team could chase them down to the wire and turn it around. But, Arsenal certainly looking as if they're not as vulnerable as they were in previous years. I remember talking to an Arsenal fan here from Nigeria at the end of 10 games, and I'm saying Arsenal look like the real deal. Because in games last season, we saw that game against Newcastle recently, that game would have turned into a defeat in previous seasons. They held on and take a point and could have really won it as well. And so that is a little difference between Arsenal. Games where they would normally struggle and fall away, even if they fall behind, there's not any puncture of confidence. And so they have the ability to come back. And I think Arsenal under Arteta, he has really instilled a belief in them, and the way they're playing as well is something to admire.
Yeah, Brian. And I think compared to Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, to an extent, Arsenal have a very small squad. And we've seen in the past where when one or two players get injured, things tend to fall apart. Do you think that it's almost necessary for Arsenal to dip in the January window and get a striker in, or maybe a winger in if Saka or Martinelli or even Nketiah gets injured? Or do you think that they ride out the storm with the players that they have and the bond that they've built with Arteta and the system so far this season?
No, I don't think it's absolutely necessary that they need to dip into the transfer market in January, but I do think that they are aware that depth is absolutely important, especially at this time of the season, when they're looking to progress in or further their ambitions in other cup competitions. So I think ultimately, though, Arsenal will have to choose whether, are we going to focus on maintaining a title run and win this Premier League trophy for the first time since 2004, or are we going to see if we can win the Europa League or balance both? So eventually, clubs at that level tend to make a particular decision. Some will say that, we try to win every competition, but no, they really do have to compartmentalize, especially with a squad as small as Arsenal's. I think they have the camaraderie, they have the togetherness, and most importantly, they have the mentality under Arteta. Though that is the key difference. Before, Arsenal was the nearly team, the team that had immense potential. Now they seem to be on that track where they can get to winning something. They have to win something first, though, to actually, change that stigma.
I'm hoping that happens this year. Jurgen Klopp, who has won a lot since he's joined Liverpool, things haven't looked great for them, including going down earlier this morning to Brighton 3-0. They spent heavily in the summer window bringing in Darwin Núñez, even in January bringing Cody Gakpo, who lit up the World Cup. Damian, what is going wrong for Liverpool? Because this is a team that challenged Manchester City to the wire last year. What are they not doing this time around?
Well, a lot of the Liverpool faithful will tell you that the absence or the departure of Sadio Mane is a massive blow, and it's turning out to be that way. But Liverpool, in terms of the front three, once, that's where they had an air of invincibility about them, and that's no longer the case. And we've seen where you talked about the players coming in, Darwin Núñez and Cody Gakpo. Clearly, Liverpool, they're buying with an eye for the future. And because they're chopping and changing that front three, and the midfield, I think, needs some replenishing, because Jordan Henderson, normally he would lead the press. Now, you can't ask him to go and press, every time on aging legs. And of course, Milner is still in there, one of the players that they turn to when they need somebody to come on and change a game. I think that Liverpool, they need to replenish the squad in midfield. They've lost the air of fear about them as well, and that is why opponents come and get at Liverpool. There was a time when once you're going to play Liverpool, psychologically, you were in the negative, because you knew that you were going to face a team that had the quality to come back or even overrun you from the get-go. Now teams believe that, this team is pretty fragile and we can get at them. And we saw that this morning against Brighton. Brighton played some beautiful stuff. It was not a fluke performance, and Liverpool looked a shell of themselves. But because of the fact that they're still chopping and changing and trying to find an identity in terms of a front three, I think that is what is taking away from Liverpool's game right now. And the heavy metal football they normally play, Bobby Firmino out for a while, of course, that in terms of is affecting Liverpool's output. But I think that they will turn it around and maybe finish the season in a Europa League spot, as they're holding on right now. But I think Champions League football is going to be tough for them to get.
Yeah, Brian, and to talk about another North London team in Tottenham who in fifth position right now, 33 points, which on paper isn't bad, but we've seen Conte and some of those performances this season where Tottenham just look very ugly to watch, and some of the results were, just shocking in terms of the opponents that they were going up against and the entire tactic. Do you think that it's down to how Conte decides to approach? Do you think that maybe the players aren't good enough because Tottenham haven't invested heavily in this team? Do you think that this Tottenham team can even challenge for that Champions League spot when April or May comes around?
Tottenham has always been like a really funny team over the years. I remember under Mourinho, the criticism as well was that they're hard to watch, but Mourinho got them to a cup final for the first time in over a decade, and then he was fired just before that final. But with this team, you don't really see them, going far deep into any cup competitions. They seem to play with a kind of mentality of shyness. I don't know. It's very difficult to kind of explain because you see that these players they obviously have quality within the team. I think, yes, Tottenham has never been known to invest in their squad heavily, but they have gotten the players that Conte wanted. It hasn't quite worked out, but they're still fifth with a run-in to go to finish or qualify for the Champions League next season. So it's not all bad, but it's just the playing style and the mentality within the team. Something seems a bit off. And I've never really believed that Conte and Tottenham were a good match together anyways. And I don't see him staying beyond this season if, the situation stays like this, because there's already been reports of him having some fallout with the board. So if the team cannot invest heavily in this summer, then I don't see Conte staying.
Well, interestingly, that could change because we're hearing that there's a Qatari-led group that they want to invest in a Premier League club, and we understand they've approached the Tottenham Hotspurs, and Daniel Levy will be meeting with them in short order. So maybe Conte will have the money to spend that he wants to splash around if he's there next season. But the fact is that he's always played with. He's a kind of a handbrake manager, sits on the handbrake and then tries to release a team when they win possession. I think that if he allows this Tottenham team to try and be a little bit more proactive instead of, allowing opponents to dominate the ball, I think that they'll be a little bit higher up the table. And in games that they would risk it a little bit more, I think that they would have a greater return in terms of points. But the fact is that, he tends to choose safety first, and it's hard to watch at times. But sometimes it's effective. We've seen them, secured points in big matches where they've sat and hit the opponent on the counter. But I think that if he allows them to go out and express themselves a little bit more, Tottenham Hotspur could be a little bit better to watch, and even, a little bit more frightening in terms of, fighting for a Champions League spot or even high up the table.
Yeah, we have around 5 minutes to go. Newcastle, when the takeover happened, we thought that it would have been a very long process, especially knowing the established top six. They didn't go out and buy some of the world-class names that they were linked with. But right now, in the thick of the Champions League race, and can't necessarily be ruled out of the title race either, how impressive is Eddie Howe as a coach to you, Damian? How he's used the lesser players that the likes of, Steve Bruce wasn't able to get the best of. How good has Newcastle been to you this season?
I've always been a fan of Eddie Howe, even from his time at Bournemouth. He has always get the team to play a brand of football that is easy to watch, and then he has done the same thing at Newcastle. I think for the owners of Newcastle, I think it was a gamble that's paying off and giving them more returns than they actually thought they would have had at this stage. I think they were only installing him to see if they could get a bigger manager when they become available, because we saw they were linked with people like Jose Mourinho, and there was a time when they were even thinking of trying to approach Ancelotti based on reports coming out of Spain at the time. And Julian Lopetegui, who is now in the Premier League, was also one of the names shortlisted. But I think Eddie Howe has gone in there and, like a boxer from the canvas, really against the odds, has really punched above his weight. And so for that, I think that Newcastle, they've also bought into the philosophy, and he's getting the players in that he wanted. I think that the acquisition of Trippier from very early as well was another big move from Newcastle, and that one is paying dividends. Bruno Guimaraes, who I think unfortunately never had much time at the World Cup, and the Newcastle fans thought that he should have played more, and I too believe that too. He's a fantastic player, and everything happens through him. Joe Ellington is one of them that, he's fighting like a warrior, and some of the players that Eddie Howe has rejuvenated. Miguel Almiron, one of a fantastic player, always beautiful to watch, and he's playing with the kind of confidence now that we've seen, some of the top pros play with over the years. And that credit must go to Eddie Howe, because he has certainly turned these players into believers, and it's hard to really fight players who believe that they are the very best.
Yeah, finally, Brian, maybe at the end of October, we thought that Nottingham Forest were done for, that they wasted their time spending all that money. But now they're 13th in the table, going on a bit of a run. A team like West Ham, who invested heavily, are in the relegation zone along with Everton and Southampton. If you had to choose one team who will definitely go down with all their performances and things that you've seen so far, who would you choose?
Well, I've always maintained throughout the season that it would be Bournemouth. They have the weakest squad. I think they have the shortest number of players in their squad in the Premier League, but they're hovering just above the relegation zone right now. West Ham and Everton are very worrying for me, but if I had to choose one team, I would go ahead and say Bournemouth. Southampton, though they're at the bottom, I believe they'll get themselves out. But yeah, Bournemouth for me.
All right, so we'll definitely see how the relegation battle goes.
I think, just to say, Daniel, I think Everton will go down this season. They flirted with relegation last year, and with all the turmoil and chaos, I think they'll go down.
With Lampard in charge, anything is possible. Damian, Brian, thank you so much for joining me as always. And hopefully at the end of the season, we'll be able to talk again. So take care, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Damian Gordon and Brian Pitter, they're talking about the major storylines in the English Premier League so far. Things are getting really hot. Arsenal, they currently top the table with 44 points. Manchester City missing the chance to close the gap. They are second on 39. Manchester United third with 38, so 1 point behind City, and Newcastle right there in fourth position. Tottenham, Fulham, Brighton, Brentford, Liverpool and Chelsea round out the top 10. Not all the time you see Liverpool and Chelsea languishing in 9th and 10th. And as I mentioned a short while ago, West Ham, Everton, and Southampton, the bottom three teams. But Bournemouth, Wolves, Leicester, and Leeds not too far off. So we will see how the season goes. And as usual, we'll continue to have discussions throughout the year right here on Sports Talk. So that is it for the show today. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, who left comments. So sorry that I couldn't read all of them, but hopefully we will be able to next time. So join us again next week and every Saturday, in fact, from 1 to 2 p.m. right here on Love 101, the family station. Enjoy your weekend, and as always, please watch some sports.